your assessment of the current state of Star Wars is so dead on. The brand is hobbled. I think. I think Kenobi was the last chance. Kenobi was the last chance to bring back old school fans, and how the colossal disappointment that Kenobi was. Just, I think a lot of us just said, well, that's it. There's nothing left. I mean, as much as like it was pointed out to me that Andor is effectively Les Miserables, that's not enough to make me like it, clever, but
there's no such thing as never. You can rally the troops surprisingly easily by pulling, a really interesting rabbit out of your hat. So let's say, KK's gone and Favreau, let's say, is officially announced as the ruler of Star Wars. I think there would be some interest in it. And just to exaggerate the point, if suddenly we got the announcement that Tarantino was now in charge of all Star Wars, I'm okay with waiting for his first effort. Like, there's lots of ways to make this work. And the most important one is to actually make a good product that people like and do it one at a time and slowly rebuild. So it can be done.
Well, let's have one objection. What Paul is saying.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Andre.
Yeah, I want to hear your thoughts on this, but I do have like one objection to it, and that is, you already had the sequel trilogy where you had the opportunity to have Han, Leia, and Luke, all of the originals together on screen, and they blew it.
Right.
It didn't happen.
Yeah.
So that's like a huge strike against them right there. But you can still bring fans back again. And this is the really, really big disaster that I think was with the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. There you had something of a new chance. You had Hugh McGregor. You had the actor playing Anakin Skywalker. I forget his name right now, but you had him coming back. There you had the possibility for a similar reunion. You could have had Mark Hamill in some capacity, but they didn't. Instead, they had this Reva character that was invented for this particular series that had like this huge thing just to remind everyone this is current year. And then you had the whole Last Jedi-isms all over again.
Yep.
So here was something that could have been used to bring fans back again, and they blew it completely. And because it was something that there was fan excitement for, that stings all the worse, and it's going to be even more difficult to pull people back again. And this is what I wanted to ask you, WDW Pro, very specifically on exactly why this was done with Reva, because this is something that I believe I heard you say to our good friend Valiant Renegade over at his stream. Is there not some kind of restriction, like some of the DEI requirements that prevented the Obi-Wan series from being all it could be?
Well, I am trying to remember back now. I do remember that, but I don't remember the details of it now and how that. I believe that was the Story Matters group.
Yeah, I believe
Inside
it was
Disney.
some of that. You said something along the lines of, well, you already have 2 white leads, so you can't have a third one.
That's right. That came from, well, I can't tell you from where that came from inside. Whoops-a-daisy, almost messed up there. But that came from an insider who got in trouble with Lucasfilm. I think we can say that. They got in trouble, and so they were happy to spill their guts a little bit. But yeah, so they were not I'm with you now. I'm remembering exactly the details of this. So they originally had it planned out where it was going to be starring Luke. Luke was going to be the main character there, but they could not have this be the 3 males little adventure, right? It can't be Obi-Wan versus Anakin with Luke involved. And so they switched it to Leia, and that still wasn't good enough. They needed to make it more diverse. And so, yeah, that's exactly right. Now,
was
what I was interested in...
Was this an arbitrary decision, or was these like hard and fast rules that they needed to follow?
It's a checkbox. It's all the checkboxes that they need to check, and that's why Disney.
These were notes that came back. These were notes that came back when it was in its nascent phase.
Notes from who? The Story Group, which, believe me, is a bunch of Mario Puzos sitting around.
Well, not the story group at Lucasfilm, but the Story Matters group, which is a different group inside Disney, which does sort of a check on all of those DEI kind of things across the board. And they're not part of the Reimagine Tomorrow group.
But they could have done it the way it was for a canonical purpose, a canonical version of it. There was nothing stopping them from doing it. They wouldn't have been punished for making a canonical version of Obi-Wan. You're just saying that you had this political group that demanded fealty.
Yes, that's exactly
correct. They're part of Disney that can request changes be made. Now, one of the things that I thought was interesting that Paul was mentioning was when he was talking about the issue with Star Wars and where it's at, and it can be brought back, that people will give it interest again. And as he was talking about that, I was thinking about how they had that basically. So they really screwed the pooch in so many ways. God. But then they came back with The Mandalorian.
Yep.
And there was enough goodwill in that it exploded the Disney Plus numbers. Now think about what just happened. We had the Wall Street Journal article that came out. And in that Wall Street Journal article, what was it all about? It's basically a middle school food fight where they are shifting blame. And who is to blame? Well, it's a fight between Iger and Chapek. But really, if you bear down on this thing, the whole falling out of the stock comes from the Disney Plus numbers not reaching what they thought they were going to do when the pandemic started. And those Disney Plus numbers were largely being driven by people hyper enthusiastic over the success of The Mandalorian. And that continued into the second season. But then what shifted was that they blew the entire thing up. They had a mini MCU in progress, right? So they had all the parts in place to do what I'm calling a Favloni universe of Star Wars, where they were bringing back Luke, they were bringing back those legacy characters, they were rolling them in with new characters. They had Baby Yoda that was a merchandising darling, and they blew it all up because they didn't like Gina Carano, right? And you can say, well, that's not that big a deal. Yes, it is. They had built the whole thing around these characters, and she's one of the characters. They had to rewrite everything. It delayed everything. And now they're blame shifting everything, trying to figure out, well, who's at fault for Disney Plus not reaching where it should have? Well, you killed Star Wars with that. That's who's to blame. You killed Star Wars with it.
God, WDW, thank you for that. Confirming what I had long suspected, that really screwed them up. Didn't they have an entire series that was going to be built around her character, and that they allowed the activist wing of Lucas?
That's right.
Two series, actually. Two.
And they were interconnected with the other stories. So you had to reset everything.
Oh, so
we have always referred to Gina Carano as, sorry, I did not mean to interrupt, like what I have coined her, and I do believe that this is a very apt term. Gina Carano was a load-bearing pillar for Favreau's Star Wars. When you took away that load-bearing pillar, the whole structure collapsed.
But who? Look, these people, these activists within Disney have no power unless you give it to them. And this is why I'm saying the management is weak-willed. Why didn't Favreau walk away? Why didn't people walk away? Why did he not speak out?
That I don't get. Now,
I've never understood that.
In terms of the wokeness of Disney, I won't use the term, but Disney has been suffused with a certain segment of of society for at least 2 decades.
Yeah.
So,
well, unfortunately, Chris, what you're talking about, a lot of those guys are afraid to do it because they know they risk being canceled, just like the individual that was canceled.
Except you don't think that Favreau wouldn't get a job someplace else? That
he could, he very well could.
And I'm thinking that he's got some kind of deal where they're begging him to stay, to not go to the enemy. Because wouldn't it be funny if he went and joined Gunn? Like that would be
clearly when it came to Gina, he picked a battle with that one, and he picked the wrong battle, because you guys are right. When they lost Gina, because
we lost,
because our understanding
Mandalorian,
and I know, and I'm not trying to like overplay her as a character. No, it's true, because basically we've seen the proof in the pudding. You had Mandalorian season 2, which was mostly successful with the fans. Pretty much everybody who was on board with that first season loved the second season. Most people were. The whole Luke thing was great. You had the Mandalorian sending Baby Yoda off. There was a lot of people who were like, "Good, get rid of him."
Yeah,
because they wanted the Mandalorian to be able to do Mandalorian stuff without Baby Yoda. Fine, they had set that up. They had an entire storyline set up to where he was going to be dealing with the other the Mandalorian with the whole black saber thing, right? That was initially obviously what they were clearly setting up while Baby Yoda was off getting trained. Boba Fett happened because, and I'm positive of this now, Boba Fett only happened because Gina Carano got fired. And I stand by that now because the proof is in the pudding. Otherwise, why the fuck does that show turn into 2 episodes of The Mandalorian all of a sudden just to get Baby Yoda back in the Mandalorian's arms?
Right, to reset everything.
It makes no fucking sense otherwise. Because that whole thing, yeah.
I was reporting on this years ago that at the apex of where that was going, when people were back on board with Star Wars, and if you'll recall, by the end of The Mandalorian Season 2, even the most hardcore haters of the sequel trilogy, the fandom menace, they'll call, but they were even getting back into the show and giving this thing a chance. And they were in talks at that point with Robert Downey Jr. to bring him in to play the villain Thrawn, right? And they were going to do the same thing that had happened in the MCU, where he was going to show up in a cameo, and that sort of led you to know that all of these were going towards this big climax down the road. And it was also giving fans excitement that maybe they were going to retcon what had happened in the sequel trilogy somehow. People were fully on board, and guess what they did? Because of the Gina Carano situation where everything had to be remapped out, and because of that situation where all the drama exploded, you had celebrities and you had people who were interested in Star Wars say, I'm not touching this anymore, because it turned into ultimate toxicity. The fans now hating it because Gina Carano represented at least a percentage of those fans who saw themselves in her and saw how she was being treated. And so if you thought that they hated what had been done to the characters before, you didn't know anything yet, because now Lucasfilm was hating them.
But I remember my reaction was, look, you assholes, you've got a strong female character that we all
exactly
like.
Right.
Yeah, but she was too strong. That's the problem.
You have given us a strong female character. You've been screaming about and lecturing us incessantly about strong female representation. There's one. There she is. And now you're getting rid of her. Like, that was the last straw.
Well, this strong female, she dared to have the wrong opinions. You can only be a strong female insofar as you have the right opinions.
So therefore not a strong female.
Exactly. If you're really a strong female, then you're a threat and you need to go.
Yeah, you can't. Well, yeah, that's right. So oh my God, you really are a strong female. Get rid of her.
Exactly. Yeah, and this is what I find like so annoying. Like, this is even more proof that this shit numbers that we have for the Disney Plus, really, it's Kathleen Kennedy's fault, because she was the one who pulled the trigger on Gina Carano. It's her fault. Why is everyone so touchy-feely and afraid of mentioning that? Tom, carry on.
Well, I was just going to say, because Paulie did point out, yes, the Boba Fett was announced before Gina was fired. That's fine, yeah. But they still detoured for 2 whole fucking episodes just to just to fix the Mandalorian. So in that respect, it was still kind of basically used for that, because otherwise it was a dud.
Probably
right?
because the Ranger series didn't happen without Gina Carano. That's probably the reason.
You didn't get the Ranger series, and because, like you said, there was 2 series that were predicated on her character.
Yeah, it was the Ranger series. That was one. And that was going to lead into her own standard series. And I would hazard a guess that the Ranger series would follow up more. But without that, they suddenly had to force it into the Boba Fett series. Which is another reason. Complete mess. And people are blaming Rodriguez for it, but they really shouldn't. I mean, that was Jon Favreau having to try to make lemonade out of the lemons he was suddenly stuck with.
Yeah.